understand now why my development teams have to hate to do live demos, because this is always what's going to happen. But I hope we'll get through it anyways. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about is what I decided to call Pimp My Agile. And actually, I introduced this title and then realized later on that a lot of people actually have never seen the TV show Pimp My Ride. And I think if you have never seen the TV show called Pimp My Ride, you probably have absolutely no clue what it is I'm talking about. Sponsors? Yeah? Next. Sure, I can take this. Okay. That was loud. I'll keep it a little bit of a distance. Okay. So, but before we dig into it, just a few words about myself. I've been a product owner for 6-7 years soon. I have a background in classic management. I've done the Prince 2, I've done the PMP, IPMA, all of these kind of things. And I dare to say that I've been in all sorts of different organizations, from the very, very big ones to the very, very small ones. So this is sort of where I'm coming from. And I'm here as a sponsor. We are a fellow community of Agile passionate software developers, and we're basically here because we love what we're doing. We love our Agile software development, and we just want to share our passion. So that's basically what I'm doing here today with all the other guys running around with a big question mark on their back. And the question mark is because come to us, ask. We love to talk, and so we're here. But back to the title, back to the Pimp My Ride. So let's start there. Pimp My Ride was an amazing MTV TV show when I could still call myself being a young guy. And basically what they did, they had these horrible rusty cars that basically couldn't drive at all. They were a safety hazards, to say the least. They took them into the garage and then they pimped them. That was the whole concept, pimping the car, and made them look amazing. I'm not sure how well they were driving, but at least they looked amazing. It was really, really cool cars. And that was basically where I came from when I started thinking about, okay, what is it I want to do for my presentation? And what is it we want to do when we talk about Agile? And especially when it comes to talk about the Agile process. I've heard a lot of things today where I really think we should turn the clock a little bit back and focusing on the core values of being Agile. And that's basically where I'm going to go today. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you guys will have some basic ideas, some tangible ideas that you can take home with you and improve your process. I'm going to talk a little bit about process, and then in the end, I'm going to talk a lot about war stories, all the things I've been through, all the things we tried, and I would love to hear your stories as well. So please pitch in if you have good ideas. Okay, so quick summarizing, what's the goal? Why do we even want to do Agile? I think we need to ask ourselves that sometimes, just reminding ourselves that it's about empowered employees that actually love what they're doing. They take ownership, they're engaged about what they're doing. And we also want to be in a place where we can adapt to the ever-changing world. Things are changing much, much, much faster nowadays, so we cannot sit still and just do our process or development for the next 2 years and then think we'll come out with a happy result. We need to go back and reevaluate every single time we have the option to do so. Okay, so that's sort of the goal. So, and this is where we come from, the Agile Manifesto. These are the 4 core values. There are 12 principles as well. I'm not going to dig into those. But this is the core value of being Agile. And what I would like you guys to, I'm sure you all have seen it before. At least I hope so. But what I would like you to look and think about is, where's the process in this? Where's your framework in this? It's not. So what is it that we see people do over and over again? They apply Scrum. And I have seen it so many times, people, they apply Scrum, and then they're like, yeah, Scrum says we should have these ceremonies. Check, 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 check. Okay, we're Agile. How many have heard that before? Yeah? So we do that, and then okay, so now we're statically following the same process, month after month after month. So now we're Agile? I do not believe so. So, and of course there are others. You can do Kanban as well. Kanban is Agile too. And you can go crazy, and then you can do less, if you want to go scale, or you can go even crazier and you can do safe. And then you apply these huge frameworks, and then you're following them as it were a checklist. And where's the agile? So what I want to do is, again, remind you about this ones. Remind you about the manifesto and have a closer look here. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. So basically the process is not important here. It's the individuals and the interaction with people. Right? Responding to change over following a plan. Basically a process is a plan you're following. You're following it every sprint. You do the same thing over and over and again. So that to me is sort of like a plan. That is not agile. I'm sorry to say, but simply just applying Scrum to your development team is not being agile. You need to reconsider what makes value, what makes sense for you and your team. Inspect, adapt, and then react upon that, right? So basically, forget about all the processes and then focus on your agile process by being agile. I want to mention Marginal Agile as well, simply because I just love it. They take the Agile manifesto and they actually take it even further. They don't mention process anywhere. They talk about making people awesome and that people should be safe, we should deliver value, all of these core values, and they even take it further. I think they are spot on in my mind. I can encourage you guys to read more about it. But again, this is just to emphasize that this is one of the new takes on being agile. And once again, no process. Absolutely no process. So what do you do then? What is your agile process? Is being agile only about product development? So when we talk about agile, it's like, okay, we can adapt our product to the changing world. Okay? Could we potentially apply that to our process as well? I believe we could. So basically, take all the tools we do to have an agile product and agile software development. Could we apply those to our process? Short answer, yeah. I truly, truly believe we can. So let's talk about where you're going to start with your product development. So what is the first thing you do? We'll go a little bit high level, but what's the first thing you do when you start developing a new product? Any ideas? Very good, yes? Yes? Yes, and what's the first thing you build? Minimal viable product, yeah. But I like the idea. First you said vision. So could we argue that our manifesto is the vision? Maybe, at least when it comes to our process. But that is the minimal viable product I wanted to focus on.
Just listen up.
And actually it started quite fast. But I want to start with showing you a old commercial. And of course it's the Germans. The Germans, they know about minimal viable products, right? I hope you can hear it. I hope sound is there. I'll turn up the volume here. It is. Maybe sound will explode now. Okay, we'll see if you can hear it.
Just listen up. V-dub in the house.
Yeah.
Jason, this is your 98 whatchamacallit.
You got an F.
You know what we're gonna do now?
No.
Unpimp your auto. We just dropped it like it's hot. V-dub, representing Deutschland.
The GTI Mark V, pre-tuned by German engineers.
So that's how the Germans unpimp the car. And I think that's the perfect place to start. Start by putting all the things aside and focus on the core value. In this example, the Volkswagen. And let's do the same about your process. So what could be your minimal viable process? Cut everything into the bone. Forget about Scrum, forget about all of these things. You only have Agile in your mindset, and then see. Okay, we could focus on deliveries. Usually we think that that's a good thing. It's in the manifesto. Deliveries creates transparency, everybody knows what's going on. Makes sense. We can focus on software that is actually potentially shippable. Whenever we deliver something, we can put it out and give it to the client. Those two things are connected. Okay, we want to be able to change this. We know things are changing all the time. Fair enough. And we want to maybe focus on collaboration. We know pair programming, collaboration with the client, the management, stakeholders, all in all. So we could focus on these things. But these are just my examples. I want to emphasize that. These are my ideas for something that you could focus on. Important here is for you guys to focus on what do you see as your minimal viable process. Okay, so once we have this mindset, we can actually go and look about our keystones in Agile software development. These are the things that we know when we do good software development we need to focus on. And we can take them and just basically create our minimal viable process because it's same story. So deliver running software is because we want to focus on the value that we can give out to the users. So when you talk about minimal viable process, focus on delivering value. It's the same thing. If we have a process where we have ceremonies or processes or things we walk through, we do every day, and it does not give value, why do we do it? And I see it over and over and over again. People keep doing these things, even though it does not give value. So keep asking yourself the same thing as you ask when you talk about your product. It's like, why do we want this feature? Oh, that's because it creates this value. Fine. Why are we doing this every day? Why are we following this process? Does it give us value? Learning and experimenting is part of your daily routines. I think that's an important thing. But again, I want to emphasize this is up to you guys. But figuring out how can you apply that? How can you apply that to your process? Facilitate team communication. Okay, a team that communicates well, that makes sense. So how do we apply that? And use the feedback. That's also important. It's all Agile keystones. And it all applies to your process. Are you with me so far? I see nodding. That's good. Okay. And then once you have your minimal viable process, or as you do with your product, then you start adding features, right? So you can add a lot of things, but whenever you do it, make sure to be explicit about it. Be sure why is it actually I'm doing it. Again, focusing on value. Why do we add this new part of our process? So why do we suddenly start grooming the backlog? Why do we start estimating? Why do we do these things? Run it as experiments. Again, same thing we do when we do innovative things with our products. So run it as an experiment. Be explicit about the experiment as well. So talk to your team and say, okay, listen, for the next 2 sprints, I think we should try this. After 2 sprints, we're going to evaluate, see how it works. If everybody is happy, if it gives value, yeah, thumbs up, we're going to continue doing it. If not, we're going to stop. We're going to try something else. Make sure you listen. Listen to the team, listen to all the stakeholders. Does it work or does it not work? Get the feedback. Learn and adapt. All I'm saying here is basically just reiterating over the fact of being agile. Okay, so yeah, and I mentioned if it does not make value, stop doing it. Sorry. Okay, that was the whole background story. This was the whole general idea about creating your own process by, first of all, figuring out what is important for you and your development team, create your minimal viable product, and then slowly, as experiments, add to that process. So now we go into the phase where we're going to talk about concrete examples, because it's easy for me to stand here and come with all this theory. But let's be practical. Right? Here I have a list of some examples. I have no clue how much time we actually have left. But I'm going to keep going through all of these examples till we run out of time. And please pitch in if you have good ideas. I'll just see here. We have time. Okay, sprint length. You can read a lot of books about how long should your sprint be. Some says 1 week, some say 2 weeks, some are longer. But what works for you? What works for your team? If you started out doing 2-week sprint, should you continue doing a 2-week sprint? And does the sprint has to be the same length every time? Could you one sprint be 1 week and the next sprint be 2 weeks? I think why not? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when I come down and talk about the planning session. But we have this tendency, and I know that's how Scrum would like us to do it, that, okay, so we fix the time, and then when we go into planning mode, what we're going to do is we're going to take from the backlog, and then we're going to fill into the bucket until we run out of space, right? Does that always make sense to you? Does that always give you a clear sprint goal? Why not consider turning it all around and say, this is my sprint goal. This is what I, as a product owner, would like the team to develop. And then ask the team the other way around and say, how many days do we need to deliver this? Then suddenly your sprint length is very variable. It doesn't have to be the same all the time. So these are just some of the thoughts that you can take. And I'm not saying this is going to work for all teams. I think if you want to do the variable sprint length, you need a quite mature team. But the whole point here is just take these static ideas from Scrum or whatever and just think about it. What does actually make sense to you guys? Sure.
What about estimating the velocity? I mean, when you're having a variable sprint length, then the velocity and the sprint analysis for the velocity will be complicated. I mean, this is like the concept of having variable sprint length. But if you are working in a constant state, then you are aware about your capabilities, and you can map the resource capability with your sprint.
That is true. And if velocity is something very important to you, if it gives value to you, maybe you need to have more fixed length of your sprint. But I would actually dare to challenge you and ask, does it really give you value to measure the velocity? But now we're going down a road that will take us, that will be a long discussion. But I do not believe in velocity. So, but I still think you could apply some of this, even though you need to so you can divide your velocity with number of days. I know it doesn't give you any accurate ideas, but then again, velocity isn't accurate at all. Velocity does not work on a sprint. I think it was Mike Cohn who talked about the basketball teams, that if they look back in the season, in every game they scored 98 points in average. Does that mean that they in the next sprint are going to deliver 98 points? I don't think so.
The point, the complication will be coming in the release, not in the sprint. Why? Because if we are assuming that you have a fixed release scope of work, let's call it this way, and in the middle of the release, something ad hoc show up. So there is an increase in the number of stories or in the items. Now, if you're not aware about the velocity, if you're not computing the velocity, then what happens is that you don't know how long it will take for the team to finish, because you don't have a kind of the capability. You cannot predict the capability.
But I don't think your velocity will help you with that either. And I think if something ad hoc appears in the middle of the sprint, it doesn't matter if your sprint was 10 days or 14 days or 8 days. It will still appear, it will still affect your sprint, and it will still require for you to reevaluate. But I know the whole velocity discussion but this is just an example. And I'm not saying that one thing applies to all teams. It's just something to think about. Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban. A lot of people are juggling with this. And when is one better than the other? I think it totally depends on the situation. So do you need to follow one continuously? I had a development team, just to give you a good example. They're very good with Scrum. Scrumban-ish, our kind of Scrum, let me call it like that. But during holidays, when everybody has to go home for vacation, and it makes it really, really hard for us to do a proper planning, because how much can we do when everybody is at vacation at some point? Some people are only there for half of the sprint, so do we hand over to the next one? And so on and so forth. I'm sure you know these complications. The quick solution for us were, okay, listen, for the next 3 weeks until 5th of Jan, what we're going to do is Scrum Kanban, or even just Kanban. You're going to pick from the top of the backlog, you're going to solve the task, and once you're done, you take the next one. It's not always that easy. In our case, what we did was that we had a lot of small user stories, small things that have been pain points for us for a long time, and we took those and put in the top of the backlog. We actually cleaned up all the annoyancy, all the bugs, all the small things during our Christmas. It was extremely effective in a time where the team are usually extremely ineffective. Again, I'm not saying it always works, but there are times where these things can apply. Consider it, instead of just being static about your process. The review. I have been to many reviews, and usually a review is sort of like a board meeting. The scared developers come into the big table, the stakeholders sit around, and then they're shaking a little bit while they're trying to demo whatever they have delivered during the sprint. And usually the demo goes just like my presentation did. You know, it's not working. And is that always the best way to show what you've done? And what are your stakeholders? And if you have multiple clients, are they at the same technical level? Do they expect the same explanation to what has been done? Maybe not. So there are many other ways to conduct a review. You can do a value cafe. You can do the marketplace things where you can have groups of developers sitting in each corner and presenting their feature they have created, and then the stakeholders can walk around and have conversations with the developers. Again, just ideas for you to think about. There are much, much better ways than put everybody into the board meeting and point fingers.
Actually, the best way I've seen so far for that is when you have user stories, you have acceptance criteria, you have created them together with stakeholders, the review day or hours is them actually using the software.
Yeah.
And then they know that if they ask for the earth, then they have to test the earth, and they don't want that. So they ask for the things that are really necessary, and they are the ones who actually check that that has been delivered. And that's the best way to get a certain understanding of the effort, complexity, and what is the value.
I totally agree, but again, it depends on the stakeholders, because are the stakeholders your users, or are the stakeholders the management of the users? So there can be various scenarios, but I really like the idea of actually having the stakeholders using the software you have built. It's not always possible, but when it is, absolutely it's a great idea.
How can it be possible to get a user?
Sorry?
How can you not have the user?
How you cannot?
Yes.
I think there can be many.
If you are doing real user acceptance.
I think that there can be many scenarios where the users are not available. Yeah.
One idea that we're experimenting with is to train the users to interface with Scrum people. Now we train Scrum people to interface with users, we have to train users to interface with Scrum. I think that's one way to do it. Because users who can understand where people work are as important as the other way around.
Backlog refinement. I've done this in different ways as well. I saw Andreas' presentation. They do it twice a week. They spend time on backlog refinement or grooming. I've heard that the average team spends 5 to 10% on this task. But I think that depends, because are you in the beginning of a product? I think you spend a lot more time on grooming your next features. Or are you in the end of the product life cycle? Again, things will change. And who is actually in charge of this work? Is it the product owner? Is it the development teams by themselves, or do they do it together? Just think about it. Figure out what options are there and what applies best to your exact scenario. And should the whole team be there? Maybe you just say that these two guys, they will do the grooming, and then they're going to present it to the rest of the team at a later stage. Consider it. Retrospectives, one of my favorites. So, retrospectives, a lot of people do a lot of Scrum Masters that do this drawing of a ship. What's the wind in our sail? What's our anchor? What should we continue doing? What should we stop doing? I think that can be great. But I also seen a lot of retrospectives where half of the team are extremely quiet. They just sit there in the corner, maybe even with their mobile phone. So make sure to engage them all. And the way you can engage these guys is trying to do things a little bit different. I don't know if you know these, I think they're called Jimmy cards. And what's her name? Eliza Atkins have also created these inspiration cards. Basically where everybody in the team draw a card, reads up a question that they need to answer. It can be, who were the most helpful teammate to you this sprint? What was the biggest annoyance that you had to overcome this sprint? So basically to get the conversation rolling, consider it. But the worst thing I have seen about retrospectives is that in the beginning of the sprint, sometimes a team member express some frustration. And usually that happens during daily Scrum. And usually what happens is that some of the guys, maybe even the Scrum Master, he will raise his hand and say, oh, no, this is daily Scrum. This one you should save for retrospective. 10 days later, you have retrospective. And either one of two things have happened. Either they sort of forgot about it, and then maybe it's okay, maybe it wasn't that important. Or the other thing that happens is that this tiny frustration have now exploded to something extremely chaotic. And I can't help asking, why did we have to wait 10 days? If this was something important to the developer, why don't we bring it up immediately? If it's just that one task, okay, let's spend 20 minutes handling it. I'm not saying it should be part of the DS, but you can end your DS and then you can invite to a separate meeting where we discuss this. Instead of letting it explode in your hands. So again, be agile about it. Planning. I think we have in our teams, we experienced experimented a lot with the planning. As I mentioned before, we tried to say it was a fixed scope and then let the sprint length be changeable. We also done the classic one where the product owner and the team sit together, and then we just basically pick from the top of the backlog. Oh, and I only have 1 minute left. Okay, I'm gonna speed it up. But we also done where we said, okay, why not just let the team plan? Because the thing is, a lot of your user stories in your backlog have some sort of synergy. So if we're gonna touch in on this component, it's also gonna affect this component, so we might as well do this user story at the same time. So I think some of the best planning sessions I have had where I actually as a product owner, I stepped out of the meeting and told the team and said, listen, you can look at the backlog, you can see what's my highest priority, but now have a look at it, bear that in your mind, and then tell me what you think we should do the next sprint. So I walk out. Of course, I'm available if they have questions, but I walk out. They do their planning, they invite me in and say, this is what we think we should do. Do you agree? Again, it's an option. User stories. I just want to say something quick about the user stories. I'm totally running out of time here, but I want to mention the user stories because who creates your user stories? And usually it's the product owner, but of course a lot of guys also have experience with the developers creating user stories. But I also had examples where the client created user stories. Of course, that required an experienced client, someone who understood Agile and user stories and the way we were working. But because I had this client, sorry, he could actually get access to our backlog and he could help prioritizing. That worked extremely well. Because the product owner, he will not always know everything, and it actually also facilitated a lot of communication between the client and the developers. And that's all we want, right? Process tool, I think this is one of the most simplest one. Everybody loves to hate Jira. Some then uses Trello. Trello is a great example. It's extremely simple. But Jira also have some benefits. And you need to, if you are not all at the same location, you might have a need for having some sort of electronic board or something that you can share across different offices. But if you don't, why don't you just use your whiteboard? If it makes sense. We are also seeing the handwriting of developers, so that is not always a good idea. But consider it. Sometimes, oh, we can't do this because Jira will not allow me. Okay, what is that? So basically what I'm trying to say here is that you should be agile about your whole process. Every single thing is up for evaluation. If it does not give you value, redo it. I heard someone in the previous session, and it's not to pinpoint anyone, but I heard someone say, that's not Scrum. I forgot the context, but I heard someone saying that's not Scrum. And my immediate response were, and so what? If it does not gives you value, if at Kareem they figure out that something else is more valuable to them, please by all means doing it. Because if you're just following Scrum because it tells you to, and do stuff because it tells you to, please, my God, you have failed. You have failed to be agile. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. So, but there are a few things to be careful about. I would argue strongly to keep your daily Scrum. I'm not saying you can't change the format of it, but the whole concept of the team talking every day, talking about what did they just do and what do they plan to do. I think that is something that you should keep. I heard many development teams saying, oh, we talk during the day, we do not need daily Scrums. And my answer to that would be fine, it will take you 5 minutes. So what's the hassle? Not everybody loves changes. The developers are a special species. They like to be able to sit in front of their desk every day, do the same work more or less every day, and as long as there's Coke and pizza, they're happy, right? So be careful with the changes, and also be careful with changing too much at the same time, because how every change will have an effect. So whenever you do too much, which one of the changes was actually the valuable one? Involve the team. Make sure the team understands why you're doing it, is the value of what you're trying to achieve, so they can feel that they're part of it. I like the idea of taking your whole changes to your process, run it as experiment, put them up on your whiteboard and say, this is the experiments we're running right now on our process. And then, of course, evaluate. And the classic one, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Don't change just because of changing. Remember, we are value-driven. Only do things that create value. And a final note, remember that something that used to work does not always continue to work. So you need to adapt all the time. Inspect and adapt. Okay. I more than enough ran out of time. I will in a short time take a few questions, but before that I just want to quickly say that we are all here with the question marks. We come from fellow community. We are starting a fellow academy where we would like to involve ourselves in the whole agile software development community in Dubai. We are available for conversations, brainstorms, workshops, whatever you need. We will be here. We're also at the booth, so come ask us. And if you need us at a later date, please send us an email, and we will be happy to join in with you guys. Sorry I ran out of time. Thank you so much.